If you've ever looked at a children's book and thought, I know I could use this in my music classroom, but how? You're in the right place. Hi, I'm Jessica Palmer, National Marketing Lead here at West Music.
And I'm Liz Hartley, National Sales Consultant. We've all been there. We love the story, you know your kids will love the story, but figuring out how to turn it into an actual music lesson is where things can get a little fuzzy.
So today, we're taking the pressure off. We've got a stack of children's books
that we have not looked at ahead of time.
No prep, no plan, just two music teachers, some great books, and a conversation about how we might use them in the classroom.
Because the truth is, using children's literature and music doesn't have to be complicated. It can be playful, creative, and totally doable.
So let's jump in, pick a book, and see where it takes us. We have our first book. We just saw these books this morning. We had a few minutes right before we started filming just to flip through them. But you are getting our 100% true, honest reactions to these books. So our first one is How to Little Rooster. This is by John Feierabend, which if you follow Feierabend, you are probably very familiar with his Songtale books. They are really lovely, especially for early childhood is where I typically use them. I love these books because they do have music in the back, which is really nice. So you know how the song goes. There is a refrain that keeps coming back, this little rooster went cock-a-doodle-doo-dee-doodle-dee-doodle-dee-doodle-dee-doo. And as you read this book, your students will start singing that with you. Anytime we have a cast of characters, I think. So we've got all of these different animals are great to practice call and response with littles, are great to use puppets or stuffies.
Or choose instruments, right?
Choose instruments.
Lots of standards. I don't know how, every standard is written differently in every state, but there's a lot of selecting instruments based on their tone quality. And so being able to choose an instrument that makes sense with a duck not only gives students choice, but also opportunities to practice with those instruments. And then, of course, tone, color, and timbre.
Yeah, it makes it a little more interactive. You're not just reading the book, you're asking them to participate while you're reading the book.
Totally. I like this one too because every line has that little, had a little sheep and my sheep pleased me, fed my sheep under yonder tree, that sort of familiar song, but also adds every different animal, so that's kind of fun.
Yeah. And there are so many farm animal related songs that you could pair up with this book.
I think about the game plan, the kindergarten first couple of weeks of game plan are all farm animals. So if you're using the game plan curriculum, it's all farm animals, and here you've got another book that you can stick in as needed for your students.
Yeah, I even think you could add in some movement exploration. How do these different animals move around the room? What do they sound like? And if you want to tie it all together, this is a good song that is good for those end of the year performances to either have the kids sing along to or to share some of the instrument selection work that they've done.
Yeah, it's a really cool one. I like this one a lot, and I think kids will enjoy coming up with new ways to interact with it. Okay, so our next book we're going to take a look at is Squeak, Rumble, Whomp, 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 a Sonic Adventure by Wynton Marsalis, illustrated by Paul Rogers. And immediately you've got onomatopoeia, right? So your English teachers are going to be thrilled because your students know what onomatopoeia are, and they're going to be able to talk about words that make sounds. This book immediately to me screamed choose instruments that match with the words, right? That's the most obvious glaring lesson is let's pick, for example, our back door squeaks, a noisy mouse eeks. Okay, well, let's find something that makes that sound, right? So if you have a great collection of unpitched percussion or even pitched whatever in your classroom, giving students the opportunity to choose a thing is so powerful in the classroom. And then you go through the book and you make those noises as you discover them. I think sometimes we think that there has to be a song always. And there doesn't necessarily, because if you're like me and composition scares you, this is still accessible to you without writing yourself a song. And I think that's a really cool one.
And I think a cool way to incorporate student choice. whether you're doing that as a large group, or if you've got some older kids that maybe you want to break into small groups and assign different parts of the books and say, okay, your job as a team is to figure out what these sound effects should be.
Right, totally. And then also, you've got different sounds on each page. So here, this one is flop, flap, 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 full-op, 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 clap, 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 collop, collop, collop. Crazy words, so Wit and Marsalis. Yes. But maybe we take that and create some kind of rhythmic ostinato that we can layer then just from those words, right? There's a lot of opportunity to do that very Orff workshop, break into some small groups, and let's create our own rhythm here if that's what you're focusing on in class that day. So depending on what you want to focus on, if it's going to be rhythmic, or maybe it's going to be rhythmic notation, and we want them to maybe write that down for us and create some student composition, there's lots of ways to go about that.
I had a different idea for this book. Yeah. I went into kind of found sound territory. Cool. So this book is all about hearing sounds out in the city, hearing the doors squeak and the trucks make sound. Could be a really interesting way to explore found sound in the school building. What are the ways we can create sound without instruments, whether that's tapping on a table or brushing things together, scraping things together? Maybe you go explore the school a little bit if that's something you're able to do, of like, what found sounds can we find in the gym? What found sounds can we find in the cafeteria? That might not be possible for everybody, but what a cool way to explore those found sounds and maybe create a composition using some of the found sounds.
Using non-traditional instruments.
Yeah.
And there's nothing better than a lesson that you send your kids off after class that is going to be a little bit annoying to the rest of the school building. I really think that is that's the cornerstone of a really quality lesson.
I know my students would have loved something like this, the ability to have a little bit of creativity and like go figure things out on their own. And maybe for my older students, I would have challenged them to work together in groups to craft their own composition using the found sounds. Okay, next up we have Stretch by Doreen Cronin, best-selling author of Click, Clack, Moo, Cows That Type. This book screams movement activity. You've got all kinds of stretching and kicking and moving all over the place. So whether that is creative movement or creating some kind of choreography, putting on some music and just going for it.
Yeah, if you're a Delcros person, if you love those eurythmic, like the push and the weight of movement, if you're one of those people, this is absolutely spectacular for that. The immediate thought when I looked at this one is, let's put on some instrumental music, read this book, and just let the kids move. Giving students opportunities to simply move is incredibly important, not only just to internalize a lot of these musical elements, but also to practice moving through space so that when you get to complicated folk dances, they have some opportunities to learn how to not run into each other, right? So just creative movement is such a valuable element, and sometimes it can feel very scary, but if you have a book that's kind of showing them, okay, maybe I'm an astronaut and I'm moving in space, and you've got that light floaty feeling, or this gum bubble I'm looking at that is stretching and then popping. There's a lot of opportunity to learn about contrast just within those movements. And sometimes we forget that movement and music are intrinsically connected.
Absolutely. It's body awareness, it's practicing listening, it's interpreting what you're hearing. All of those standards that we're trying to hit all the time, you can hit a lot of them just by doing an activity like this.
And then as ever, when you've got anything that feels like a sound, students always have an opportunity to choose some kind of instrument that might feel like that, right? When we think about stretching, what sound might sound like stretching?
Or even vocally too. This page, you can stretch with a whisper, you can stretch with a roar.
It's loud and soft, high and low.
Loud, soft,
fast,
high, low. Stretching underwater, what would that sound like? A stretch that goes a stretch too far. I think The possibilities are endless here.
Truly. So this one is a little trickier. We're going to talk a little bit about how to take a book and maybe flesh it out into an entire program. And we chose this one because it has a really lovely theme. It's called My Heart Fills with Happiness. Monique Gray Smith is the author for this one. The illustrations are by Julie Flett, and it was translated into Cree by Mary Cardinal Collins. And what you'll see in this book is a lot of sort of little vignettes would be great ways to think about them. For example, my heart fills with happiness when I see the face of someone I love. And then perhaps your students have created something that has to do with seeing people that they love. It's beautifully translated into Cree here, and figuring out the pronunciations and having your students use those translations would be really beautiful for exploring cultures and music of other cultures, and being aware of the spaces that we take up here, especially in the United States. It's a beautiful book, and it would create a really nice structure. Here's one that just says, I sing.
I might use this book to build out a theme for a program, an end of the year sharing program, where we use the different prompts here, the I sing, I walk barefoot on the grass, my heart fills me with happiness when I listen to stories. And then I might select pieces that fit those themes, whether they are sung pieces or whether we do a creative movement piece, or we put in an Orff composition that has the same feeling of walking barefoot in the grass, and then using the story to kind of narrate. What a great way to help with program selection by saying, okay, here's the theme, this is the story we're trying to tell. A process that can feel a little overwhelming if you're like, what am I going to do for my spring program this year? Let's narrow it down to, let's identify all the pieces that we've been working on throughout the year that fit the theme.
And I like that you said pieces we've been working on throughout the year, because one thing I did with my kindergartners is we always did an informants, because I didn't want my kindergartners spending time in rehearsal in that valuable classroom time. So what I can see is, all right, well, remember when we did Rain on the Green Grass earlier, kindergartners? Now we're walking barefoot on the grass on that page. That's the one we're going to use for that. When it talks about telling stories. All right, well, what was your favorite storybook we did this year? Grab the lesson from that, throw it in. Because then your kids are able to pick their favorite lessons, and you're showing off your slam dunk stuff to your parents at the end of the year in a way that is much more meaningful, especially for young students, to really show off.
And by using pieces your students are already familiar with, oh my gosh, how much more confident and prepared are they going to feel going into that performance? Because it's not something that they've just learned within the last couple weeks. This is something they've practiced and done over and over again. And what a wow moment for the parents and the folks in the audience to see kind of this beautiful story told through their children's performance.
And a glimpse into what your classroom actually is all about.
Yes. All right, our final book today is Last Stop on Market Street. The words are by Matt de la Pena and pictures by Christian Robinson. When we first picked up this book in the last 10 minutes, we were not quite sure. And I think it's good for us to talk through, like, an immediate idea is not popping out to us, but how can we kind of look through? And not every book that you love is going to have an immediate, like, oh, of course, this is perfect for movement, or this is perfect for a sound story.
I think I want to start with this one by saying that it is really important to read to children. I know, shocking, groundbreaking information here from Liz. But it is valuable, even in your music class, to share stories that you love, because what is music if not storytelling? And so if you don't have a perfectly presentable lesson that you're going to take to conference and present to your colleagues, it is still valuable to read stories you love to your students. So I would start by bringing this book to my kids and reading it to them, and talking about what this book is about and why it's important and why listening to the sounds of the city connects to the music class. First of all, your kids are likely going to come up with ideas that you had never thought of. So I'd start there. But secondly, the more times you reintroduce a book to yourself, the more likely it is that you're going to come up with an idea to address a standard that you're looking to teach. So for example, if I were to read this book 2 or 3 times, it might be that eventually okay, now I'm starting to feel the themes. Maybe there's a song in there somewhere. And maybe I hear a melody used at a different conference and I go, I might be able to adjust the words a little bit to fit this book, in a way that makes more sense in my classroom. So I have said in the last couple of minutes that like writing a song can sometimes feel like a big lift, but we are all great thieves in the classroom. And it might be that there's a melody that's already floating around in your head that would fit here nicely with just a couple of small changes.
Yeah, I think when I'm looking at children's books, I'm often looking for, is there repetitive words? Are there repetitive motifs? Is there a cast of characters? This one doesn't have that. And so
It doesn't even rhyme.
It doesn't even rhyme. But you hit the nail on the head is, okay, well then let's go to the theme. What is this story trying to tell? In this one, I'm seeing a lot of listening. I'm seeing a lot of closing your eyes and appreciating what's around you. I might use this to help kick off listening activities, or maybe something surrounding mindfulness about closing your eyes and taking a breath and hearing the world around you and finding the musicality in that.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about found sounds before
Yes.
in terms of finding non-traditional instruments, but there are lots of sounds around us all the time that are valuable to listen to. So I think this would be a good example of maybe jumping into some listening activities with something intentional to start. I think David Rao said in one of his workshops that like not every book has to have a lesson. Sometimes the connection really is just listening or city sounds or whatever.
It's okay to just select a book to read to your students because it's a great book and it's got a great message. And then that's all it needs to be sometimes. Don't sleep on Last Stop on Market Street. And if you have a really great idea, if you've used this book before, I would love to know how you've used it.
Yeah.
I bet you would too.
Yeah, I'd love that. That was so fun. And hopefully it showed you that you don't need a perfectly polished plan to use your favorite children's literature in your classroom.
Sometimes it's just about asking, what musical connections can I make? Rhythm, movement, form, instruments, storytelling. The possibilities are everywhere.
If you're feeling inspired, we have a huge collection of curated children's literature that's perfect for music educators. You can explore the full collection at westmusic.com and start building your own book-to-music moments.
And we'd love to hear from you. What are your favorite books to use in the music class? Drop frequently used titles and how you use them in the comments.
And don't forget to subscribe to the West Music YouTube channel for more educational resources and classroom ideas designed to support you.
Thanks for hanging out with us, and happy reading!